Welcome, foolish mortal, to a sprawling new series that will turn your stomach, twist your mind, and terrorize your wallet. Welcome to Board and Savior's Final Girl Review.
In this series, I'm going to take a look at each and every feature film box release for Final Girl, as well as, I don't know, maybe some exciting extras along the way. This first video, the one that you're watching right now, serves a sinister dual purpose to provide a basic overview of Final Girl and also to act as a review of the first feature film box, The Happy Trails Horror. Oh, it didn't get all dark and scary that time. Sorry, that's awkward. No, you missed it. The moment's passed. You'll get him next time. I just wanted to cut in here, let you know this video will show all sorts of things from the Happy Trails Horror feature film box, so you have been warned. And I just wanted to cut in here to tell you that Board and Savior is not the only thing I do. I am currently running a campaign on Kickstarter for the Saga of Jack Jade. It is the culmination of a ton of work. It's about a character I created years and years ago, and the link is in the description below. I would really appreciate it if you checked it out, shared it with your friends, all that good stuff. Maybe you gave a few bucks, I don't know. I would really appreciate it. It means a ton to me. So thank you very much, and let's get back to board games. In Final Girl, you play as, yep, you guessed it, the Final Girl. Wow, just took the words right out of my mouth, huh? Good for you. You feel smart? Yeah, we get it. Look at you. Look at you. Sorry. She is the last character in the horror movie standing against the monster. She has found her resolve, and she knows that it's either her or the killer. Of course, the Final Girl does not start out as the final girl. There are plenty of victims all over the board at the beginning of the game that will draw the attention of the killer. This divides the game into two halves, in a way. In the first chunk of the game, you do your best to shepherd potential victims to safety, preventing the killer's bloodlust from reaching a fever pitch. Once all of the victims are off the board, either because they've been slain or saved, the game turns into a showdown. It's just you or the killer. All the killer wants is your head, and vice versa. In most games of Final Girl, the only way to lose is by being killed, and the only way to win is by killing the killer. Of course, it is also important to note that in the event that you perish at the same time as the killer, you are still considered the winner. After all, it is thanks to your heroic sacrifice that evil has been vanquished. So, how does the game actually play? Every killer and location will have their own little quirks, but the backbone of the game will always be the same. Things start out in the action phase, where you will play action cards from your hand and make a horror roll to see what happens. Most action cards have 3 levels of success. The top level that triggers when you roll 2 successes, the middle level that occurs when you roll 1 success, and a bottom level that happens when you roll no successes. You may also roll partial successes. This symbol shows 2 cards, which means you can convert that into a success by discarding 2 cards. The action cards let you do all sorts of useful things, assuming that you roll well. They allow you to move, they allow you to attack the killer, allow you to search, allow you to heal your wounds, and some allow you to decrease the horror level. What's the horror level? Oh, I'm glad you asked. First of all, allow me to thank the child who made this chart for us. This was clearly drawn by an elementary school student and not by a grown adult man. This track and the one directly outside of it dictate how things are going to go in a game of Final Girl. There are 3 sections to this inner track. Green, which is good. White, which is fine. Red, which is very, 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 very bad. This is the horror level, and it tells you how scary things are right now. If things are extremely scary, you only get 1 die to roll when making your checks. That's a problem. If you can calm things down over to this green section, you will get to roll 3 dice when making those checks. 3 dice, you are fairly likely to succeed. 1 die, it's not going to go well. Okay? Got it. You might be wondering what happens if you would ever need to decrease the horror level further past this section. Instead of decreasing the horror level more, you instead look to this symbol. This is the time symbol, a little hourglass. And if ever you see this symbol with the up, you gain more time on this chart over here. Time is your most precious resource because it is how you pay for cards and do actions. Many of the actions will have a time cost. So let's say you want to walk from one space to another, for example. You first roll your dice to see if you can walk. If you are successful, you walk, and then you take time off of this track. If the time ever drops below 0, the action phase immediately ends. That said, time is good for more than just actions. It's also how you access all of these amazing cards. The cards here in the action tableau allow you to do upgraded versions of your basic action cards, defend against incoming attacks, and improve your chances of success on future rolls. This means you gotta manage your time carefully. You wanna do helpful actions that hurt the killer and save potential victims, but you also need to hold on to enough time that you'll be able to buy the action cards you'll need for the next round. Sometimes you may even set yourself up for a turn where you do nothing. You can discard action cards from your hand for +1 time each. That may not sound fun, but you gotta think of it as an investment in your future. Stand still this turn, so next turn you can fly across the board and smack the killer silly. So if extra time is what you get when you would decrease the horror level past its limit, what happens when you would increase the horror level past its limit? It's bad, isn't it? It sure is. Let's take a look at the killer board. Whenever you would need to increase the horror track past its limit, you instead move up on the killer's bloodlust track. This is an adorable little chart that tells you the killer's current strength and their current movement speed. In most cases, these numbers are going to increase as the killer's bloodlust does. Bloodlust also rises when the killer slaughters a victim or when this little blood splatter symbol shows up on a card. When the marker hits this space, the killer's dark power is unlocked, giving the baddie a new ability that makes your life more difficult. After you're done taking your actions and buying cards for the next round, you will move on to the killer phase, and you're not gonna like it. First, the killer takes their action. This is Hans' killer action. It'll tell you who the killer targets, either a victim, the final girl, or either, whoever's closer. In this case, Hans targets either the final girl or a victim, whoever is closer. Then the killer moves toward the closest target. In this case, Hans is 2 spaces away from this victim and 3 spaces away from these, so he's gonna go toward the closest victim, and he can move up to his movement value, which is currently 2, based on where this bloodlust marker is. So he will move 1-2 spaces toward that closest victim. Then the killer attacks. Victims are killed after taking just 1 damage, so he will then attack. If the killer attacks you, though, one of 2 things could happen. They could simply deal damage equal to their attack value. Hans' current attack value based on this bloodlust is 3, or you can play a reaction card, which are these blue cards. These allow you to make a roll to block some or all of the incoming damage, and some will even let you retaliate, damaging the killer for even thinking about hurting you. Of course, you have to have a reaction card to play, and then you need to roll well, and the killer has so much health that this is barely going to make a dent, but don't get discouraged. You can do this? After the killer takes their action, you'll draw the top terror card from the terror deck and process its effects. These range from awful to horrible, and some may even unlock new dark powers that the killer can use in his hunt for you and your companions. Thus ends the killer phase. There are a bunch of other rules, but you have a good sense of how things work now. Save victims, kill the killer, don't die. With that, let's look at the Happy Trails horror. First, let's look at our killer, Hans the Butcher. Hans is a gentleman wielding a 50-pound sledgehammer with glowing red eyes, wearing an iron pig mask.
Hans is baking no prisoners. Please help me. You've never seen a pork chop like this. These lines weren't in the script. This little piggy went to Mar Kill. Please call someone. I can't stop.
Hans is a piece of garbage. I'm sorry, I should really be more polite to these killers, but Hans really ticked me off in my first few games. He starts out extremely slow and methodical, but when he's killed a few victims, he gets damn near impossible to stop. He's got a whopping 12 health, and he steadily ticks up on all of the scary things. Movement speed increases, damage increases, and he's got some cards that cause him to regain health based on how many campers he's killed. I particularly hated this card. Whenever Hans attacks you, he attacks one additional time. This power turned a promising game into a bitter loss real fast.
If you let Hans march around the board, killing victims, he will get out of control and he will destroy everything you've ever loved.
That sounds dramatic, but play a few games of Happy Trails Horror. You will see. Now that we know a bit about our baddie, let's look at the map. Camp Happy Trails is a summertime haven for teens and young adults, complete with a fire pit, cabins, and of course, Makeout Point. There are all sorts of thematic nods to Friday the 13th and other campground horror stories. You've got the fireworks that distract the killer, the mysterious lake that pulls campers in, and the motorboat that you can use to get across the lake in a flash. As far as horror movies go, the slasher at a campground subgenre has never really spoken that much to me, and that might be why this box didn't instantly draw me in. It is important to note, though, that this is the recommended first box for Final Girl, since there are no special rules to remember for either the killer or the location. Don't get me wrong, that simplicity does not equate to easiness. I lost my first 3 games of Happy Trails Horror, and I lost them bad. There was a bit of frustration that came along with that, but I more so wanted to figure it out. It seems like the secret to defeating Hans is twofold. 1, don't let him kill many victims. 2, get a little bit lucky, or maybe just don't get absurdly unlucky. I entered my third game with a very specific plan, which was to allow Hans to kill no more than 4 victims. Based on the setup, that seemed very possible. Hans went this way, off to kill the campers in the utility shed while I headed for the docks. The first terror card that I pulled said that a fire had broken out in either the cabins, the utility shed, or the dock. I rolled a die, and it was in the docks. Now Hans is basically starting the game with 2 free kills, with 3 more within arm's reach. Even though I had the specific plan to prevent Hans from killing, the game just kinda said, nope. I played another 2 turns, and it was very clear which way things were going, so I shuffled the cards and I reset the board, and I tried again. And that time, it worked. The plan worked. Cards came up that were tough to deal with, but not impossible, and I won. I slashed Hans up with a knife that I found in the cabins. Huzzah! But that third game really rubbed me the wrong way. I had the right idea, but it just didn't matter. And I'm not saying that I don't like games that throw up roadblocks or force you to deal with interesting challenges. I mean, Spirit Island is one of my favorite games because it does just that. That said, I am not a huge fan of games that can smack you with a loss on turn 1. Full disclosure, Happy Trails Horror is not the first feature film box that I have played. I started with Into the Void, which is a feature film from Final Girl Series 2, and I liked that box so much that I decided to start this series of reviews. And I figured probably the best place to begin is with the simplest box. All that to say, I am not in any way opposed to Final Girl as a game system. I think it is great, and I love the additional rules and thematic inclusions that make specific scenarios sing. For Final Girl as a whole, I think I'd give the game about an 8 out of 10. The only thing is that it's just a little bit more lucky than I'd like. So, Final Girl as a whole is an 8. What about Happy Trails Horror? I've already said that the whole campground slasher thing, not my favorite. When you couple that with a few terror cards that, with a bad shuffle, can make you feel utterly defeated if you find them at the top of the deck, and, in my opinion, a game that gets just a little bit too simple once you figure out how you're actually meant to deal with Hans, that puts Happy Trails Horror, for me, at a 6.5. It is evocative, and it can get very tense. Those things I liked. I have to stress, 6.5 is an incredibly personal rating. If you like Friday the 13th or other teens in the woods hunted by a sadistic killer stories, you are going to like this box more than I did. I think the best way to play Final Girl is somewhere in between really caring about winning and just kind of watching the story play out. Because this is a theme that I care less about, it's a lot easier for me to view it as a game that I'm losing than as a story that is going wildly off the rails. If you like this theme, I think you'd probably have fun either seeing Hans smash his way through campers or watching Laurie deal the final crippling blow to the killer. And that is my overview of Final Girl and my review of Happy Trails Horror. If you liked this video, please, like the video. And hit the subscribe button while you're at it. There is a lot more Final Girl stuff to review. Now, I gotta go deal with something. Hey, what makes Hans such a sadistic killer? His sour attitude. Buddy, we gotta get you some help. Anyway, I heard Hans tell one of his victims to stop swining. Happy Trails Horror is my favorite bored game. Hans' favorite 80s song goes, "Snout, snout, let it all out." If you kill Hans in a dirty place, do you call it a pig's die?